Hi, Community Church. This is Sue over at the office. I'm praying everyone is outstanding, as handling all the rain that we're getting and thunder and lightning and all that other good stuff. I have to just tell you how excited I was on this past Saturday that we got to go to the global conference. What a difference it makes. It was so peaceful and hopeful and filled with the Spirit and filled with Jesus just walking and just feeling it. Oh, it was so different from the last couple of conferences that I've been to that it just made my heart feel good. And it was good to see a lot of familiar faces and a couple of other familiar faces. I don't know about you. If you know that our bishop for the Florida conference is Bishop Mark Webb, who was also the bishop that I served under up in Upper New York. So it was really great to catch up with him. But today's hymn is an interesting one, and I did not know this about John Newton, and I'm going to that's a hint of who it's going to be. So it was quite interesting learning a little bit more about John Newton that I did not know. So here we go. This is in the summer of 1725 in the city of London, England. John Newton was born. His mother was a devoted member of the Dissenters, Dissenters, Dissenters. That's some homework for you to look up. And she taught the young boy prayer and filled his mind with scriptures. But it was John's father, an often absent sea captain, who captured the boy's imagination. John dreamed of being on the ship and sailing away to all these wide seas and adventures and all these mysterious destinations. Just before John's 7th birthday, his mother became very ill and died, leaving her son kind of like an orphan because his father was always on the ships, always going around. So he was taken in by a lot of distant relatives, and he was made fun of because of his belief in God. And he was discouraged to pray. They wouldn't let him pray. They ridiculed him for his faith, that it was not good and he shouldn't have followed that. He was very unhappy and very lonely. So John turned to his dreams of the sea. And at the age of 11, he ran off and became an apprentice on his father's ship. If it was a close father-son relationship he was looking for, he was sadly disappointed. For like his foster family, his father also rejected him. For years, the young fellow plied the Mediterranean on the sailing ships, enjoying the experiences and immortalities offered in each exotic port. This is a young kid. This is 11 years old, 12 years old, and he just got to learn all the bad stuff. He was frequently fired for insubordination, but just as frequently hired by another ship's master, eager for young seamen and not too particular about their character. So John Newman's character really wasn't too good at the time. After a short stint in the British Navy, John deserted and ran away to Africa to seek his fortune in new ventures in the African slave trade. So here we have this young boy who lost his mom. His father was not a very good role model, and here he goes from ship to ship and city to city, and now he skipped out of the army, and now he heads on to become working with the slave trader, thinking that would be exciting. But again, he found his situation declining dramatically. The slave trader's absence, John was left in the care of his wife, very vindictive wife, who imprisoned John and in her quarters and beat him, forced him to eat food from the floor like a dog. Believing death was preferable to this kind of treatment, John escaped from this prison into the West African forest and eventually made his way to the Atlantic coast. After lightning signal fires, John was finally spotted by a passing ship's captain who sent small boats to the shore to pick him up. The captain had hoped the lone man had gold or ivory to offer him, and was disappointed instead of found a penniless runaway. Putting him to work as a mate, the captain learned later that was an unwise decision. His character kind of stepped forward. Becoming bored during particular long watches, John broke into the ship's supply of rum and generously shared it with the crew. Again demonstrating his lack of discipline, John downed a goodly amount of the liquor, became totally disoriented, and fell overboard. One of the ship's officers, either out of pity or spite, saved John from drowning by spearing him in the thigh with a harpoon and reeling him back around like a failing fish. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go over this, and it's not funny, but the picture in my head was kind of funny, and I'm sure in ours. So here we have this young boy that is going from boat to boat and place to place, and he falls overboard and gets, instead of sending them a life jacket or anything else, they send the harpoon and gets him in the leg, and they reel him back in. Painfully ruined and severely unable disciplined, John was neglected below deck, where it was thought he could be no more trouble. So they kind of locked him up again down in there. It was a miserable journey from Africa to England, and shifting and stinking and hold, and John had endless days and nights to ponder his empty life and unfulfilled dreams. Somehow, though, a copy of Thomas A. Kemper's book, Imitation of Christ, fell into his hands. Reading the book awakened his conscience to the things of God, and he began to recall some of the early lessons that he learned at his mother's knees. As the slave ship near Scotland, severe winds and rain battered her, and she began to take on water. Desperate measures were taken to keep her from sinking, and for days every able-bodied man, slave or free, bailed water from the foundering ship. Exhausted, frightening, and facing certain death, John Newton had a life-transforming experience with God. The assurance of God's love flooded his soul. Later he would describe it as a miracle, an amazing manifest of God's grace. Although that voyage was not his last, John Newton's heart became drawn in other directions. 2 years after this miraculous conversion, he married Mary Catlett, a devout Christian. And not long after that, John left the sea for good and became a minister. While he lived to preach and tend to his little flock of believers with zealous care, his greatest love and joy was writing in hymns to sing at his weekly prayer meeting. He composed over 280 hymns, but the one for which he is most remembered came from his shipboard conversion and carries the message of his personal experience, called Amazing Grace. Well, I was just always wondered where that came from. His amazing grace, how sweet that sound that saved a wretch like me. He was once lost, but now he's found. Isn't that wonderful? This whole song is just about all his journeys. And so when you hear this song and you sing this song, think about the travels that he had and what he went through. And the young man that just started out at the age of 11 or 7 when everything just started going downhill for him. It just goes to show that no matter where we are and what we can do, God will always use us to come true. God will always find us if we're lost. No matter how bad we are, no matter how bad the situation, God always takes us under his wings and brings us back to him. All we have to do is ask and be awakened, have a new awakening, a revival of sort. Sometimes we have to have revivals every day. Sometimes we have to have revivals every minute. I don't know, when I drive down I-4, I think I need a revival every minute. That's why when I drive that road, I just turn on the Christian music and just kind of get into the songs and sing them loud and sing them. And sometimes when I'm sitting in traffic and I start dancing, Well, not quite dancing, but you know what I mean. And I just get going and listen to that sound of God just reassuring me that we're good there safely. Just take your time. And there's no reason to rush because nobody else is going nowhere. And just pray that everybody else on the road is safe. So this was quite interesting. I never knew that about John Newton. I'm hoping nobody else did. But it's interesting to continue to learn about all these ordinary people. Now again, another person that never went to seminary and never went to school to learn, to study, but God opened his heart and his mind. So the lost and the wicked, God's amazing grace is just for all of us. Not just it's just for everybody that needs it. And all we have to do is ask God. And every time I think about that, all we have to do is knock. God is always knocking on our door. All we have to do is ask him and invite him in. So if you're struggling, or if you have any issues or places that you don't understand where you're at or why you're at, please come over to the office. We'll pray with you. We may not have an answer, but we can always pray for you. We love praying for all of our families here, that not only our families at home, but our church families. And God just opens up the doors for us to bring you closer to God. So I hope that this song, when you sing it, when you hear it, just think of this young man on a boat that did all the crazy worldly things that he did. But yet God used him to make an amazing song to talk about God's amazing grace. Until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hands. God bless you.